Welcome, everyone. This is the February 2025 MBE workshop. My name is Andrew, the founder and owner of Ibis Prep, and we are so excited to get to work. We're going to start with contracts. And I have this poll that I can bring up, and everyone can use it to answer the questions. So the poll is launched. Please don't answer until you see the question, and let's jump right into it. I'm going to bounce around different Q banks this year. For today, I'm going to use Adaptabar. It's a fine company. I like their explanations. I like John Grossman's videos that he does. So yeah, let's do some questions together. I'll read the first one. Maybe we'll bounce around and I'll let some other people read. Someone already picked A. I hope they're right. Okay. Will the manufacturer likely prevail? A lumber supplier agreed to sell a furniture manufacturer all the lumber that the manufacturer required over a 2-year period. Sorry, let me do this thing. That's better, right? Okay. A lumber supplier agreed to sell to a furniture manufacturer all the lumber that the manufacturer required over a 2-year period. The sales contract provided that payment was due 60 days after delivery, but that a 3% discount would be allowed if the manufacturer paid within 10 days of delivery. During the first year of the contract, the manufacturer regularly paid within the 10-day period and received a 3% discount. 15 days after the supplier had made its most recent lumber delivery to the manufacturer, the supplier had received no payment from the manufacturer. At this time, the supplier became aware of rumors from a credible source that the manufacturer's financial condition was precarious. The supplier called the manufacturer, demanding assurances regarding the manufacturer's financial status. The manufacturer immediately mailed to the supplier its latest audited financial statements, as well as a satisfactory credit report prepared by the manufacturer's banker. The rumors proved to be false. Nevertheless, the supplier refused to resume deliveries. The manufacturer sued the supplier for breach of contract. Will the manufacturer likely prevail? No, because the contract was unenforceable since the manufacturer had not committed to purchase a definite quantity of lumber. No, because the supplier had reasonable grounds for insecurity and was therefore entitled to cancel the contract and refuse to make any future deliveries. Yes, because the credit report and audited financial statements provided adequate assurance of due performance under the contract. Yes, because the supplier was not entitled to condition resumption of deliveries on the receipt of financial status information. Take your time. Diane Safiola, are you able to use the poll feature?
It didn't pop up.
All right, Safiola, you're a VIP student. You can put your answer in the chat. What about you, Diana? Are you able to use the poll feature?
No, I'm on my phone and it doesn't pop up.
All right, bet. You can put yours in the chat too. Don't worry. Don't take any weight in what Safiola and Diana say in the chat. It could be right, could be wrong. Who knows? No offense. All right, so let's end the poll. Sorry if that was a little quick for everyone, but the majority of people picked C. Actually, the only people who picked A were the 2 people who picked before the answer was even revealed, which makes a lot of sense. We all think it's C here, right? There's adequate assurances. What made their adequate assurances? They said, like, we have audited financial statements, we have a satisfactory credit report. That's, a common situation, anticipatory repudiation. They heard rumors, they requested assurances, assurances were provided. That's the end of that. The contract must resume. So we like answer C here. A party to a contract with reasonable grounds to worry that the other party may not perform can request adequate assurances of performance pursuant to UCC 2609. The supplier in this case did so, but the information provided by the manufacturer would be regarded as satisfying the request for an assumption of performance. Therefore, the supplier's refusal to continue performance constituted a breach of contract for which the manufacturer is entitled to compensation. So what I'm going to do right now, what I'm doing in class is I'm teaching you something that you should all do on your own religiously, like every single day you should do this, which is do questions and then tease out a rule of law that's just like straight to the point that'll help you, remember the fact pattern or remember the rule of law, or it's just a cram guide point. So here, what I would say is if we don't want to make it bold and underline, but say if a party requests reasonable assurances because there is insecurity of inability to pay, and the other party responds with audits and financial statements proving they had money. There is no anticipatory repudiation because assurances were provided. Fair enough, right? That's like the first thing that we learned today. I mean, honestly, we didn't really learn it because everyone got it right, but we reinforced it. And Eric saying they also send immediately, right? They have 30 days as a merchant. That is true, right? There's 30 days to respond to a request for further assurances. If they're merchants, they responded expeditiously here. So, oh, I didn't even show you guys how great of a class you are. You all did great. I don't even need to teach anymore. There's going to be a lot of guest lectures this year, so don't get too comfortable with me. All right. Poll number 2. Don't guess yet, please. Okay. So what percentage of the actor's earnings is a court most likely to award the agent? Ooh, damages. How fun. An actor straight out of drama school, straight out of Compton, and an agent entered into a 1-year written contract that described the services the agent would provide. Because he was eager for work, the actor agreed in the contract to pay the agent 15% of his yearly earnings. At the end of the year, the actor was so pleased with his many roles that he gave the agent 20% of his earnings. After the first contract had expired, the actor and agent decided to continue working together. They photocopied their old contract, changed the date, and signed it. At the end of the year, a dispute arose as to what percentage of earnings the actor owed. It is a trade practice in the acting profession for actors to pay their agents 10% of the yearly earnings payable at the end of the year. What percentage of the actor's earnings is a court most likely to award the agent? 20% because course of dealing is given greater weight than trade usage, 15% because it was an express term of the contract, 10% because trade usage is the applicable default rule, and nothing because the contract is too indefinite. What do you think, Safila? Are you submitting in the chat or are you doing the poll now?
The poll just showed up.
Oh, all right, bet. Perfect. I was like, all eyes on you. All right. We have a pretty I think most people agree with this one. We like B here, B as in basketball. Because I'd say in the hierarchy of weight, express terms, prior course of dealing, industry, trade, and usage. Fair enough. And here it was an express term. I mean, they literally photocopied it like, I might give some bonuses out this year, but that doesn't mean I'm going to give the same bonuses out next year. I'm going to pay people per their contract, and then bonuses are kind of like, up to me. Just because I did it last year doesn't mean I have to do it this year. Just because, Kuman does bonuses doesn't mean Ibis Prep has to do bonuses. Trust me, Kuman does not do bonuses. Yeah, I think we like B here. It was express term of the contract. No offense to Kuman. Kuman's probably a solid place to send your kids. B is correct. The parties' new contract adopted the terms of the previous contract, which include the 15% fee. Evidence of express terms is given greater weight than evidence of trade usage. Therefore, the express term, the 15% fee, is controlling because the court would give it greater weight than the evidence of trade usage, the 10% fee. So some people picked A. A is incorrect. The generally applicable standard, which provides that evidence of course of dealing is given greater weight than evidence of trade usage, is inapplicable here because a course of dealing was never established and because the written contract was explicit. One instance of a previous conduct is insufficient to establish prior course of dealing. Okay, that's cool. So I'd say that I'm gonna butcher this spelling. Yeah, I was waiting for the red line to come out because the hierarchy of weight goes express terms, course of dealing, and then industry, trade, or customs. Fair enough, right? All right, let's try another one. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to do the polls first. Just. You guys can read it quietly. Oh, never mind. I have to do one thing real quick. I messed that all up. How do I end this poll? Oh, I see, okay. Wait, not that. There we go. All right, that commercial break was brought to you by the Philadelphia Eagles. So a notorious spendthrift, what is the best defense for the uncle? If a spendthrift sues his uncle for 5,000 and the latter learned of the car purchase contract and then repudiated his promise, which of the following is the uncle's best defense? I'm going to mention this because this is a vocabulary test and there's little sneaky vocab words. English is your second language. The word latter, what that means is like the second of two options, the former and the latter, former first, second latter. If that was really obvious to you, it was not for you. So if the spendthrift sues his uncle for 5,000 after the latter, so the uncle learned of the car purchase contract and then repudiated his promise, which of the following is the uncle's best defense? A notorious spendthrift who is usually broke for that reason received the following letter from his uncle, a wealthy and prudent man. I understand you're in financial difficulties again. I promise to give you $5,000 on your birthday next month, but you better use it wisely or you'll never get another dime from me. The spendthrift thereupon signed a contract with a car dealer to purchase a $40,000 automobile and make a $5,000 down payment on the day after his birthday. If the spendthrift sues the uncle for 5,000 after the latter learned of the car purchase contract and then repudiated his promise, which of the following is the uncle's best defense? A promise to make a gift in the future is not enforceable. Reliance by the promisee on a promise to make a future gift does not make the promise enforceable unless the value of the promised gift is substantially equivalent to the promisee's loss by reliance. Reliance by the promisee on a promise to make a future gift does not make the promise enforceable unless that reliance also results in economic benefit to the promisor. Reliance by the promisee on a promise to make a future gift does not make the promise enforceable unless injustice can be avoided only by such enforcement. Okay, this one's a tough question. I think this is one of those examples of like, there's a good answer and then there's a better answer. Most of y'all pick the best answer, which is D. I mean, A is like a generally like kind of true statement, like a promise to make a gift in the future is not enforceable. I would have picked that, but then I saw D. Reliance by the promisee on a promise to make a future gift does not make the promise enforceable. Here we go. Unless injustice can be avoided only by such enforcement. So it's like A with a caveat. A promise to make a gift in the future is not enforceable unless injustice can be avoided only by such enforcement. It's actually a better answer. So, this is the first couple questions might have been easy. This question I would say is hard, not because it's a hard concept, but because there's two good answers and you have to really, focus on the words and the better answer. And it is a true answer. Like it's going to be unjust, then, we'd have to enforce it through a theory of promissory estoppel or something, right? But I think D's a better answer here. Okay. The uncle should have foreseen that the promise would induce action on the spendthrift's part, which the promise did. However, the nature of the spendthrift's reliance, buying a car that he could not afford, is inconsistent with the intended purpose of the uncle's gift, which suggests that injustice does not require enforcement of the promise. A is incorrect. Some gift promises are enforceable under, like I said, a reliance theory, detrimental reliance. Here's this extended explanation. Under the theory of detrimental reliance, a gratuitous promise may be enforceable notwithstanding lack of consideration if the party making the promise has reason to expect the promise will induce reliance on the part of the promisee, there has been reliance in fact, and injustice may only be avoided by enforcement of the promise. The uncle should have foreseen that his promise would induce action on the spendthrift's part, which the promise did. However, the nature of the spendthrift's reliance, buying a car he cannot afford, is inconsistent with the intended purpose of the uncle's gift, which suggests that injustice does not require enforcement of the promise. A is incorrect because there are some promises which make them without bargaining, which although the promiser makes without bargaining for anything in return, nonetheless induce the promisee to rely to legal detriment. Some gift promises are enforceable under reliance theory. Long story short, I like that little piece right here. Some gift promises are enforceable under reliance theory. If you just can accept that, then that's why this answer is what it is. Some gift promises are enforceable under a reliance theory, although the general rule is that gift promises lack consideration and are not enforceable, right? Fair enough. I feel like we could use some spacing. No one's tried to join the room. I'm missing at least like 3 key students that I would expect to be here. But what can I do? Except see them again in July. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's do a different question, different poll. That poll's still up. Okay. All right, perfect. Beautiful. All right, let's do it. I was like, I don't even want to do this question. It looks miserable, but I guess that's what we're here for. Which of the following if proved would best support the wallpaper hanger's defense? What a job, right? A professional wallpaper hanger. A wallpaper hanger. Do people even hang wallpaper anymore? Is that like a thing? It is a thing. Okay, I'm getting confirmation. I'm clearly not in the wallpaper hanging gang. I've never painted my house since I bought it in 2016 because I want to like give it a fresh paint one day. A wallpaper hanger sent a general contractor this telegram. We'll do all the paper hanging on new doctor's building per owner specs for $14,000 if you accept within a reasonable time after main contract was awarded. All right, so that's a condition. If you accept within a reasonable time after main contract awarded. Signed, the wallpaper hanger. 3 other competing hangers sent the general contractor similar bids in their respective amounts of $18,000, $19,000, and $20,000. The general contractor used the wallpaper's $14,000 figure, so they used it, they relied on it, in preparing and submitting her own sealed bid on doctor's building. Before the bids were opened, the wallpaper hanger truthfully advised the general contractor that the former's telegraphic subbid had been based on a $4,000 computational error and was therefore revoked. So it's a unilateral mistake. They made a telegraphic error. Shortly after, the general contractor was awarded the doctor's building construction contract, so they were awarded it, and subsequently contracted with another paper hanger for the price of 18, the lowest other person. The general contractor now sues the wallpaper hanger to recover 4,000. So from a general, overview, we understand what's going on here. There's a general contractor. He got a bid from a subcontractor for 14,000, accepted the bid, won the project, and now the subcontractor wasn't able to perform, so he had to replace the subcontractor, and he suffered $4,000 of damages based on what he expected and what he ended up paying. Now they're saying what if proved would best support the wallpaper hanger's defense, right? That's the one who's down $4,000. The general contractor gave the wallpaper hanger no consideration for an irrevocable subbid. The wallpaper hanger's subbid expressly requested the general contractor's acceptance after awarding of the main contract. Even after paying $18,000 for the paper hanging, the general contractor would make a net profit of $100,000 on the doctor's building contract. Before submitting her own bid, the general contractor had reason to suspect the wallpaper hanger had made a computational mistake in figuring his subbid. So the wallpaper person is the hanger is the one saying that they shouldn't have to pay the $4,000. And the general contractor, who's the doctor's building, is saying you should because I relied on your sub bid. Yeah, I tend to agree with what the class is saying. So we have 93% of the class saying that it's D because the general contractor had reason to suspect the wallpaper. So this is really, I thought this was honestly, when I read this question, I thought they were going to test like contractor, like, irrevocable offer bids, like that type of question, but it seems they were just testing unilateral mistake, right? And here, the wallpaper hangers should have to suffer the consequences of making unilateral telegraphic mistake, unless the other party knew of the non-mistaken party's mistake and essentially took advantage of them. Seems to be what D is implying right here, that they had reason to suspect they made the mistake and they didn't say anything. They acted in bad faith. Let's try D. Yeah. D is correct. A contract may be rescinded on grounds of unilateral mistake if the mistake relates to a fundamental assumption of the contract that has a material effect on the exchange. If the party asserting mistake should not bear the risk of the mistake, and either the non-mistaken party had reason to know the mistake, the effect of the mistake would make enforcement of the contract unconscionable. The wallpaper may argue that the subcontract should be rescinded on the grounds of $4,000 mistake that he had made in computing his sub bid. If the general contractor had reason to know of the computational error, this would greatly support the wallpaper hanger's argument. So we can kind of reduce that into generally a party must incur the consequences of a unilateral mistake. However, if the non-mistaken party knew of the mistaken party's mistake and essentially took advantage of them, there is a strong argument for the mistaken party to rescind. Fair enough. Okay. Let's see. Stop sharing. New poll. I don't really need to poll you guys on the Eagles versus the Panthers. If we lose that, we don't deserve to win the Super Bowl. And then Dolphins, Jets, like the Jets and the Dolphins, that rivalry goes way back. And Aaron Rodgers got some weapons like that. It's a tough game, but like I would suspect Dolphins are gonna win. Okay, let's talk about the farmer. In an action by the farmer against the landowner for damages, the farmer is entitled to recover what? Let's see. A landowner contracted in a signed writing to sell Greenacre, a 500-acre tract of farmland, to a farmer. The contract provided for exchange of the deed and purchase price of $500,000 in cash on January 15th. Possession was to be given to the farmer on the same date. On January 15th, the landowner notified the farmer that because the tenant on Greenacre wrongfully refused to quit the premises until January 30th, so you had this holdover tenant for 15 days, the landowner would not be able to deliver possession of Greenacre till then. So like, sorry, I can't deliver Greenacre because we got a dude sleeping there. But he assured the farmer that he would tender the deed in possession on that date. Okay. Throughout the month of January, the market value of Greenacre was $510,000 and its fair monthly rental value was $5,000. Okay. On January 30th, the farmer accepted a conveyance and possession of Greenacre and paid the $500,000 purchase price, but notified the landowner that he was reserving any rights he may have to damages caused by the landowner's breach. The farmer intended to use the land for raising cattle and had entered into a contract for the purchase of 500 head of cattle to be delivered to Greenacre on January 15th. Because he did not have possession of Greenacre on that date, he had to rent another pasture at a cost of $2,000 to graze the cattle for 15 days. The landowner had no reason to know that the farmer intended to use Greenacre for raising cattle or that he was purchasing cattle to be grazed on Greenacre. That's important to me because consequential damages do need to be foreseeable, and here it says he had no reason to know about it. In an action by the farmer against the landowner for damages, the farmer is entitled to recover what? Nothing, because by paying the purchase price on January 30th, he waived whatever cause of action he may have had. Nominal damages only because the market value of the land exceeded the contract price. $2,500 only, the fair rental value of Greenacre for 15 days. $2,500, the fair rental value of Greenacre for 15 days, plus 2,000, the cost of grazing the cattle elsewhere for 15 days. See what the chat's saying. Okay, I think most people were picking C. I tend to agree with C, actually. Why do I tend to agree with C? For the reason I said that I don't think you can recover for the cost of grazing for cattle elsewhere because it was not foreseeable. And then people who picked A because you waived whatever cause of action. I don't think you did because you literally said, where did it say it? He was reserving any rights he may have had. Like he notified him that he was reserving any rights he may have had to damages. So I don't think you waive damages if you explicitly reserve the right to bring a claim. And then I don't think you're gonna get the cost of the cattle because it wasn't foreseeable. You can't get consequential damage that are not foreseeable. Nice. You
Hey,
guys wanna watch?
Andrew.
That's my name. What's up?
In the question, they added the part about, him not having no reason to know that like for the cattle. If that particular statement was omitted from the fact pattern, would D have been a potential optional answer, like in a hypothetical universe?
Yeah, for sure. It would have been a potential answer, but like that'd have been a pretty tough question because it would really depend on whether he had reason to foresee it. There's other questions where they omit it and then you lean towards they didn't have reason to foresee it.
Okay.
So even if they omitted it, I still probably would have picked C unless there was like, you know what I mean? Like, how would I have known that he could have foreseen it? But like, the MBE is not that hard when you know all the laws and you're familiar with all the fact patterns because they do give you a lot of like layups like this. They literally just put it right in your face that he had no reason to know. So D is totally eliminated. But yeah, if they didn't put that sentence in, then it's kind of arguable, but it would it would depend on whether it was foreseeable, whether they had reason to know or not. So you kind of would have to like read that from between the lines, which kind of sucks. It's better when they just give it to you like that.
I think they would have had to have a $5,000 answer in there if they had omitted that, because then conceivably, if you're on the fence, they could have been entitled to that 2,500 fair market value and the 2,500. Oh no, that was it would have had to have been a different value, I think, if they would have omitted that for you to come to to mess you up on that conclusion.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it just says that they incurred $2,000 of consequential damages, but we shouldn't have to pay for those consequential damages because it wasn't foreseeable. You know what? Okay, let's see what Adaptabob has to say about it. Can you guys all see this?
Andrew, I think since you're muted.
Yeah, I think because you're muted,
we
Andrew,
can't hear
we can't
the.
hear the volume.
An indirect
Sorry about
result of the breach. Expectation damages can sometimes include consequential damages. Consequential damages are damages that expectation damages aim to put the non-breaching party in the position they would have been in had the breach not occurred. Expectation damages can sometimes include consequential damages. Consequential damages are damages that occur as an indirect result of the breach. A party's ability to recover consequential damages is governed by the principles of Hadley versus Baxendale. Under Hadley, in order for consequential damages to be recoverable, they must have been in the contemplation of the parties at the time the contract was made or otherwise foreseeable. In other words, the parties seeking consequential damages must establish that their losses due to the breach arose in the ordinary course or from special circumstances the breaching party had reason to know of. Let's say Adaptabob agrees to sell Blue Acre to Adapta-Jane on June 1st. Unbeknownst to Bob, Jane is purchasing Blue Acre so she can host a traveling carnival over the summer months. On June 1st, Bob tells Jane that he will be unable to sell her the land until June 15th because there is a holdover tenant on the property. Due to the delay, Jane has to pay $20,000 to house her staff and store her amusement rides at a different location for those extra 15 days. If Jane were to sue Bob, would she be able to recover the $20,000 as consequential damages? The answer is no. Under Hadley, the breaching party is only liable for damages that were reasonably foreseeable at the time of contracting. When Bob and Jane contracted for the sale of Blue Acre, Bob had no knowledge of Jane's plans to host a carnival. Thus, the $20,000 Jane had to spend to house her staff and store her rides was not reasonably foreseeable and may not be recovered as consequential damages.
So true or false? What we got here? A party that breaches a contract is only liable for damages that were foreseeable as a proper result of the breach when the parties entered into the contract.
True.
I think that's pretty verdad. Oh shoot. That's right. Do you guys? Is it? Do you think that I would be more effective as a teacher if I was animated and had a robot voice? Do you learn better from animations like that? I don't know, because that's really, I would love to do that. That's the next move for me. I'm gonna really animate my entire practice. All right, let's do another question though. I mean, as AI is taking over. We were talking about Allen Iverson earlier today, right? Still taking over. All right. In an action against the petroleum dealer for breach of contract, the wife will probably do what? Oh no, I really don't like this question. Skip. Okay, next question. Sorry about that. There's certain questions I just don't necessarily want to argue about. Which of the following states the buyer's rights and duties upon delivery of the peaches? All right, for all our Georgia lovers. A buyer ordered from a seller 500 bushels of #1 Royal Fuzz peaches at a specified price for prompt shipment. The seller promptly shipped 500 bushels, but by mistake shipped #2 Royal Fuzz peaches instead of #1. The error in shipment was caused by the negligence of the seller's shipping clerk. Which of the following best states the buyer's rights and duties upon delivery of the peaches? The seller's shipment of the peaches was a counteroffer and the buyer can refuse to accept them. The seller's shipment of the peaches was a counteroffer, but since peaches are perishable, the buyer, if he does not want to accept them, must reship the peaches to the seller in order to mitigate the seller's losses. The buyer must accept the peaches because a contract was formed when the seller shipped them. Although a contract was formed when the seller shipped the peaches, the buyer does not have to accept them. By the way, I'm going to write the Cram guide point for that last question. Adaptabob distracted me. You're going to see. We're going to have animations. And supermodels. I know what America wants. Cartoons and supermodels. They don't want me. I'm just kidding. All right, so yeah, I agree. I think the class is onto something here. If we share the results, y'all making my job easy. I agree with D as in dog, because what happened here? Prompt shipment order. Prompt shipment order can be accepted by prompt shipment. That's what happened here. They accepted it. Then they breached it because it's the perfect tender rule. So a prompt shipment of non-conforming goods under the UCC is an acceptance and a subsequent breach. Some people picked B. What I don't like about B, is everything. It wasn't a counteroffer. It was an acceptance and a breach. And I also don't like that they have to ship them back. I mean, maybe they have to put them in the refrigerator, but they don't have to necessarily ship them back right away. Like, they got to pick up the phone and be like, bro, you sent me the wrong peaches. Like, there's a lot of things they may have to do, but it's not a counteroffer unless, what would make this a counteroffer? Does anyone know? How could this have been a counteroffer? What additional piece of information? You like to play hypothetical, Sean? What additional piece of information would have made this a counteroffer?
I mean, obviously, if it was, I mean, because it's UCC,
What
for it
could
to
they
be
included? What piece of paper could they have included with the Royal 2 Fuzz Peaches? If it wasn't a
The-
mistake.
the memo
An
thing?
accommodation.
Yeah, it's called a notice of accommodation. I mean,
Okay.
technically it's a memo, but that's the thing. A notice of accommodation, which would be like, hey, who was it? Hey, buyer, we didn't have any #1 Royal Fuzzes, but hoping you'll take these #2s. Let me know if that's cool. That's a counteroffer because it's a notice of accommodation. This wasn't that. This was you shipped the wrong things. You guys made a mistake. So it's an acceptance, but you do not have to accept them because it was a breach of the perfect tender rule. All right, D is correct. By shipping non-conforming goods, the #2s instead of the #1s, the seller was accepting the buyer's offer and thus forming a contract and breaching at the same time, right? Acceptance, breach. Without any evidence that the seller tried to notify them with a notice of accommodation, right? The buyer may simply reject the shipment. Extended explanation. Holy bananas. Under the UCC, when a seller sends a prompt shipment of non-conforming goods, he's accepting the offer and breaching the contract simultaneously. That's the takeaway here. The buyer may respond in multiple ways, including accepting the non-conforming goods or rejecting them. If the buyer decides to reject the non-conforming goods, he can then sue for the breach. However, if the seller seasonably notifies the buyer that the shipment is being offered only as an accommodation to the buyer, the seller's shipment of those non-conforming goods will not constitute a breach. The buyer can accept the accommodation shipment, which is not considered official acceptance, but rather counteroffer of the goods if they have shipped, that they're shipped as they are. Right? We didn't have to get into all that jazz. This was an easy answer in my opinion because it wasn't a counteroffer. There was no notice of accommodation. It was an acceptance, but you don't have to accept a non-conforming shipment under the UCC perfect tender rule. So I'm sorry, let me cram 2 points in your minds. The first point is pretty obvious that well, not obvious. I mean, nothing's obvious. Consequential damages are only recoverable if they are foreseeable at the time the contract is entered into. I have this thing where I can like tell myself I'm not learning that. Like that doesn't matter to me. I refuse to let it enter my brain. And I just did that when the video was like under this case law, like I just don't care. I like refuse to learn it. So if you memorize what cases they were, you're a better man than me. I refuse to learn that. I just know that they're only recoverable if they're foreseeable at the time the contract is entered into. And then the other thing that we just learned from this question is if there is an offer for prompt shipment, a non-conforming shipment is a simultaneous acceptance and breach unless it is accompanied by a notice of accommodation. Cool, fair enough. I mean, sometimes I'll write even little fact patterns. I'll be like, for example, if you ordered #1 peaches but got #2 peaches, this would be an acceptance and a breach. But like, I don't know, I'm kind of moving at a quicker pace today because we're doing introductions, which is very important. I want to know everyone so that if I ever need a lawyer, I'll just have all these people I can call. Let's try poll number 15. All right, beautiful. Does anyone want to read this? Maybe switch it up a little bit?
I can read it.
Beautiful, Gabby. Let's hear it.
Okay, so the call of the question asks, which of the following additional facts, if established by the Sun, would best support his chance of obtaining rescission of the sale to the trainer? A son who knew nothing about horses inherited a thoroughbred colt whose disagreeable behavior made him a pest around the barn. The son sold the colt for $1,500 to an experienced racehorse trainer who knew of the son's ignorance about horses. At the time of the sale, the son said to the trainer, "I hate to say it, but this horse is bad-tempered and nothing special." Assume that soon after the sale, the horse won 3 races and earned $400,000 for the trainer. Which of the following additional facts, if established by the son, would best support his chance of obtaining rescission of the sale to the trainer? A, the son did not know until after the sale that the purchaser was an experienced racehorse trainer. B, at a pre-sale exercise session of which the trainer knew that the son was not aware, the trainer clocked the horse in record-setting time, far surpassing any previous performance. C, the horse was the only thoroughbred that the son owned, and the son did not know how to evaluate young and untested racehorses. Or D, at the time of the sale, the son was angry and upset over an incident in which the horse had reared and thrown a rider.
Amazing. Let's see what we got. Okay, I feel like the class is pretty much in congruence, in agreement. One thing we can all agree on, we'll mostly agree on. I like B, right? The reason I like B is because what would help the son? Well, the son did not know until after the sale that the purchaser was an experienced racehorse trainer. I mean, like, that's just the way life goes, you know? You challenged me to basketball and you didn't know that I was like Michael Jordan's nephew, you know? Still gotta pay me. At a pre-sale exercise session in which the trainer knew that the son was not aware, the trainer clocked the horse in record-setting time, far surpassing her previous opponents. That would help the son, right? Because it's like, okay, the trainer had some information that he didn't reveal to the son. He acted in bad faith. Like if the son would have known that, you know, and he should have known that because he knew that the son didn't know. So like he told him, I hate to say it, but this horse is bad-tempered and nothing special. Like that's not true, bro. You just saw this horse go crazy on the track. Like that's misrepresentation. The horse was the only thoroughbred that the son owned, and the son did not know how to evaluate young and untested. Again, you can't claim stupidity as why you got the raw end of a deal, like usually. At the time of the sale, the son was angry and upset over incidents, or said read that, right? Okay, you were emotional. Like all these things are like, sorry, son, you probably shouldn't be in the horse buying business. But B is like, actually, son, you could get your money back because this guy tricked you. He said there was nothing special, but it was really Seabiscuit. That's pretty good horse drop. I had to think about that one for a second. There was like a couple good horses back in my day. I just can't remember their name right now.
Probably American Pharaoh was one of them, right?
Yeah, American Pharaoh.
Secretariat.
Secretariat. What's the one that I really liked that was like, I forget his name. It'll come to me at the most random time. It's like 2008 or 2012 maybe. Okay, a person's non-disclosure of fact may be tantamount to misrepresentation of fact sufficient to allow rescission of a contract. So non-disclosure, that's what I was getting at. Where the person knows that disclosure of the fact would correct the other party's mistake with respect to a basic assumption of the contract, and where non-disclosure amounts to a failure to act in good faith. The fact that the horse earned $400,000 for the trainer soon after the sale, over 250 times the contract price, suggests that non-disclosure of the horse's true abilities related to a basic assumption of contract related to the horse's net worth, the horse's worth. If the son can establish that the trainer was aware that the horse was capable of running in a record-setting pace, and that the son was ignorant of this fact, then the son has a plausible argument for rescission on the grounds of non-disclosure. I like that. So non-disclosure is a possible grounds for rescission. This is something I do. Like, I'll be like, for example, if a horse trainer knows that his horse is, and I'm sorry, I have to do this. Someone was talking about ADHD earlier, but like fast horses from 2000s. We got here. You said American Pharaoh #1, you know. That's not the one I'm thinking of though. Smarty Jones, that's who I'm thinking of, Smarty Jones. Do you remember Smarty Jones, anyone? I don't know if he won, I think he lost it, but that he was fast. Did he win them all? He seemed poised, but after getting sucked into a fast pace, yeah, he lost it. He didn't win it all, but he was fast, Smarty Jones. See, it's like Allen Iverson. They don't have to win it all to be restored for their greatness. So, for example, if a horse trainer knows that his horse is Smarty Jones, I just know that because me and my brothers used to like use that, like, oh, you think you're so fast, Smarty Jones? Like, if a horse trainer knows that his horse is Smarty Jones, but tells the kid the horse is nothing special, this could be grounds for rescission. Right, I like to do that, like, for examples, it's just kind of a way of like really reminding yourself of the specific fact pattern, because sometimes it's like difficult to even articulate what the rule of law is, but all that's really necessary is you know, remember the fact pattern, the whole same clown, different wig.
I think what's interesting about this, like based on what you just wrote, is that it's the kid that made the statement and the trainer didn't even correct him. So it's like knowing that he is of the belief that, this isn't anything special, and then you essentially commit a material misrepresentation by not correcting that belief by the other
Yeah.
party.
And look, it said what would be his best argument. It didn't say like, was he guaranteed to win, right? Because there is that argument that like, maybe he just nothing special. I saw him win run race, like who knows, like there's always a good argument. But I think what we were going at after was what's the best argument that would support the kid, and that would be it. All right, let's see what's going on with this woman. You want to read this one, Eric?
No, and I'll explain why in the chat.
All right, no, Ben, no worries, Ben. I'll just pretend that that never happened. Okay, which of the following is an accurate statement? A woman owns an exceptionally seaworthy boat. Ooh, nice. I want to go on a seaworthy boat that she charters for sport fishing at a $500 daily rate. The fee includes the use of the boat with the woman as the captain and one other crew member, as well as the fishing tackle and bait. On May 1st, a father agreed with the woman that the father would have the full day use of the boat on May 15th for himself and his family for $500. The father paid an advance deposit of $200 and signed an agreement that the deposit can be retained by the woman as liquidated damages in the event that the father canceled or failed to appear. On May 15th at 1 a.m., the Coast Guard issued heavy weather warnings and prohibited all small vessels the size of the woman's from leaving the harbor. This prohibition remained in effect throughout the day. So May 15th was the day, you're right, they're going to run it on May 15th. May 15th, there was a effective throughout the day prohibition. The father did not appear all on May 15th because he had heard the warning weathers on the he had heard the weather warnings on his radio as well, right? So like, that seems like there was no way to take this boat out. Which of the following is an accurate statement? The contract is discharged because of impossibility and the father is entitled to return the deposit. The contract is discharged because of mutual mistake concerning an essential fact, and the father is entitled to return of his deposit. The contract is not discharged because its performance was possible in view of the exceptional seaworthiness of the woman's boat, and the father is not entitled to return the deposit. The contract is not discharged, and the father is not entitled to return of his deposit because the liquidate damage clause, in effect, allocated the risk of bad weather to the father. I got you. You're fine. So what did they think this is? What are you doing right now in their eyes? Put it in chat. And I'll play the part. Like if you're listening to like a podcast, I could be a podcaster. What am I supposed to be talking about? Football. I like the Eagles, Dolphins, not the Dolphins, man. Tua's injury. Tough loss to the Packers. AFC is too tough. They'll probably just let the Chiefs play in the Super Bowl. Chiefs, Eagles. Eagles by 7. All right, we get the answer to this question. So did I do good with the podcast? I could talk about anything. Trust me, I'd be a good filibuster. So everyone picked A, right? I think it's pretty impossible. How are we going to do this when there's a stormy seas? Now, yeah, no one picked B. I was going to say, why is it not a mutual mistake? I mean, they weren't mistaken. It was just impossible. So a contract may be rescinded on grounds of supervening impossibility when a party's performance is made impossible without his fault due to the occurrence of an event, the non-occurrence of which is a basic assumption of which the contract was made. Where a contract has been rescinded on grounds of supervening impossibility, a party may obtain restitution on any benefit conferred by way of part performance of the contract. Because the Coast Guard prohibited vessels such as the Woman's from leaving the harbor that day, performance was impossible. All right, this one's pretty easy to take down explanation. So impossibility, a bad storm, for example, during a planned boat trip. Would allow for rescission of the contract and entitle the party to recover a deposit in restitution. Restitution, cool. I figured you probably have your headphones in. That's what I was just thinking. Yeah, headphones, exactly. Hey, Stephanie, are you here? Are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you're a professional at this. Do you want to read this question?
Okay.
Ooh, this one looks tough with it. I mean, not tough. This one looks long and boring. Let's try this one. Perfect.
Okay. This one says, if the collector refuses to pay the investigator anything and he sues her for $25,000, what is the probable result under the prevailing modern rule? A burglar stole a collector's impressionist painting valued at $400,000. The collector, who had insured the painting for $300,000 with an insurance company, promised to pay $25,000 to a full-time investigator for the insurance company if he effected the return of the painting to her in good condition. By company rules, the insurance company permits its investigators to accept and retain rewards from policyholders for the recovery of insured property. The investigator, by long and skillful detective work, recovered the picture and returned it undamaged to the collector. Oh, do you want me to read the question again?
No, whatever you want, but probably the answer choices.
Okay. A says the collector wins because the investigator owed the insurance company a pre-existing duty to recover the picture if possible. B says the collector wins because the insurance company, the investigator's employer, had a pre-existing duty to return the recovered painting to the collector. C says the investigator wins because the collector will benefit more from return of the $400,000 painting than from receiving the $300,000 policy proceeds. D says the investigator wins because the pre-existing duty rule does not apply if the promisee's, the investigator's duty, was owed to a third person.
And from, the chat that's going on, it's always the mother-in-law, right? She's always the judgment. Can't imagine having a mother-in-law to judge me. So this is a cool question. Asking about the modern prevailing view. I think we did a question similar to this in my essentials course. Or maybe we did it on Thursday. Or maybe I just did it with a student. Kind of all blurs together. I was like, I figured you were wearing headphones eventually, but I like the idea of like you pretending you're doing something totally different. And then I would pretend that I was doing that thing. Like, no, I'm just, watching the weather channel. All right, let's see. Has anyone seen the elephants on the beach? My mom is in town and my brother's coming today. I think I'm gonna take him to see the elephants. Oh, nice. Your wife's going into labor. That's amazing. Blessings. On football Sunday. Oh, and you don't know if it's gonna be a boy or a girl.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, we're waiting.
Cool. We're hopeful for either or anything.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we don't really care either way as long as it's healthy and happy, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've always thought that. My brother has two nephews, but whatever. It's all great. Whatever you want. They're all blessings. I find that people usually love their daughters more.
Oh, dude,
But
being a girl dad's the best, man. We have a daughter right now, and she's the coolest.
so here, well, let's do this question now. Tell a quick aside. So the results here are mostly D. Right, I agree with D. The pre-existing duty rule does not apply if the promisee duty is owed to a third person. That is the modern prevailing view. See how they explain it. Oh, not very extended. The insurance company's pre-existing duty to return the painting will not prevent the investigator, a separate party, from returning the painting in exchange for the reward. If we look at the extended explanation, a promise is supported by consideration if two things are true. The promisee is giving up something of value or somehow circumscribes his liberty to suffer legal detriment. And the promisor makes a promise as part of a bargain for exchange for the promisee's legal detriment. So those of you who are taking essays or writing essays, that's why I say doing the MBE is helpful. Because like that's really good language for consideration. I usually just say consideration is a bargain for exchange of legal detriment or value. This is like more points. They use the word circumscribes and such. Under the pre-existing duty rule, if a party does or promises to do what he is already legally obligated to do, or if he forbears or promises to forbear from doing something which he is not legally entitled to do, he has not incurred the kind of legal detriment necessary to constitute consideration, right? Pre-existing duty rule, you're already obligated to do something, you were already obligated to find the painting, so why should I have to pay you? You just did something that you're already obligated to do. Well, here's the kicker. An exception to the pre-existing duty rule arises when a pre-existing legal duty was owed to a third party. Traditionally, when a pre-existing duty was owed to a third party, a new promise to perform the same duty would not constitute consideration. However, under the prevailing modern rule, the new promise will constitute consideration when the original promise was owed to a third party. So I'm going to kind of just tie that up neatly for everyone and just say, let's just do the example, right? If an investigator makes an agreement with the private individual to get paid if he recovers the painting, this contract is valid despite the pre-existing duty rule that the investigator owed as his job because the duty was owed to a third party. And then to just summarize it, the modern view is that a duty to owed to a third party is an exception to the pre-existing. All right. Too many of those. If an investigator makes an agreement with a private individual to get paid, if he recovers a painting, this contract is valid despite the pre-existing duty rule that the investigator owed as his job because the duty was owed to a third party. The modern view is that a duty owed to a third party is an exception to the pre-existing duty rule. All right, that's kind of more complex, but just like envision this scenario, you owed the duty to your job, but then you promise a third party, they're trying to say, oh, it's not valid, there's no consideration. Well, you're right, but this is a common exception. Another exception to the pre-existing duty rule is a promise to pay back a debt. Like you owe a debt and then you promise to pay back a smaller part of it. That promise will be enforced despite lack of new consideration because it's an exception to the pre-existing duty rule. So those are two exceptions. All right, cool. Short questions. I'll try and move a little bit quicker so we can get through some more, and then you guys can watch football or I guess basketball, or I don't know what else you do on Sundays. Obviously, church. Okay, let's do this one. So on May 1st, a seller and a buyer entered into a written contract signed by both parties for the sale of a tract of land for $100,000. Delivery of the deed and payment of the purchase price was scheduled for July 1st. On June 1st, the buyer received a letter from the letter repudiating the contract. On June 5th, the buyer bought a second tract of land at a higher price as a substitute for the first tract. On June 10th, the seller communicated a retraction of the repudiation to the buyer. The buyer did not tender the purchase price for the first tract on July 1st, but subsequently sued the seller for breach of contract. Will the buyer likely prevail? All right, let's slow this one down. So what happened? So May 1st, we have a contract, right, for $100,000. Then it's going to be July 1st delivery. So May 1st, you agree to it, but then on June 1st, the seller repudiates the contract. He says, yo, I'm not going to deliver. So on June 5th, he went and bought a second tract of land at a higher price as a substitute. So he went and mitigated his damages 4 days later. And then on June 10th, he retracted the repudiation. What's the problem here? By the time he retracted the repudiation, he already had reasonably relied on the repudiation and bought a different tract of land. So therefore, I think the seller is too late. The buyer did not tender the purchase price. He didn't have to because he already bought a different piece of land as a substitute, but subsequently sued the seller for breach of contract. So who's likely to prevail? Will the buyer prevail? And we're saying, I don't think the buyer will prevail. Oh no, I'm saying I think the buyer will prevail because it was too late for the seller to repudiate. So no, because the seller retracted the repudiation prior to the agreed time for performance. No, because the buyer's tender of the purchase price on July 1st was a constructive condition to the seller's duty to tender a conveyance. Yes, because the seller's repudiation was not retractable after it was communicated to the buyer. Or yes, because the buyer bought the second tract as a substitute for the first tract prior to the seller's retraction. I think D aligns with what I was saying. And just for the nature of time, I think we can all jump on board with that. The buyer already purchased a substitute tract of land when the seller attempted to retract the repudiation, which means the buyer had changed his position in material reliance on the repudiation, rendering the retraction ineffective. We can go into a long discussion, but I'll keep it short. That says a repudiation may be retracted unless the other party has already acted in reasonable reliance on the repudiation. So let's say, for example, if a seller repudiates an agreement to sell land and the buyer buys another property, it is too late for the seller to retract the repudiation. Right? I mean, you're going to see similar examples on the actual exam, and just, do this over and over. This is what works, right? Just doing practice questions and then turning them into little cram guide points, reviewing them, mastering them, and just really obsessing over it. And someone was saying, oh, I was watching the fights last night, but I was doing practice questions. I don't have a real problem with that. I mean, that's better than not doing practice questions. I mean, you should just do them all the time and you'll pass the MBE. It's just you only have a few months. There's only a certain amount of questions. You should do them over and over and over again until you've mastered them. All right, let's talk about the chef. A chef purchased the front portion of the land. Well, in an action against the chef for breach of contract, will the sister prevail? A chef purchased the front portion of the land needed for a restaurant he desired to build and operate, but the back portion was the subject of a will dispute between a sister and brother. The sister's attorney advised that her claim was doubtful. The chef, knowing only that the unresolved dispute existed, agreed in a signed writing to pay the sister $6,000, payable $1,000 annually, in exchange for a quitclaim deed, a deed containing no warranties, for the sister, who promptly executed such a deed to the chef and received the chef's first annual payment. Shortly thereafter, the probate court handed down a decision in the brother's favor, ruling that the sister had no interest in the land. This decision has become final. The chef subsequently defaulted when his second annual installment came due. In an action against the chef for breach of contract, the chef will probably lose because she was aware at the time of the agreement with the chef that her claim to the property quitclaim was doubtful, lose because she suffered no legal detriment in executing the quitclaim deed, win because the chef bargained for and received in exchange a quitclaim deed from the sister, or win because the chef, by paying the first $1,000 installment, is a stop to deny that his agreement with his sister is an enforceable contract. You guys can take a little bit of time and read that one over. This one doesn't seem so easy. Let's see. Okay. We have I think our first debate, right? We're pretty split between A and C. We're pretty split between A and C. Lose because she was aware at the time of the agreement that the chef had her claim to the property quitclaim was doubtful, or win because the chef bargained for in exchange a quitclaim deed from the sister. Does anyone want to argue for A or argue for C and try and convince me either way?
I'll argue for C.
All right, let's hear it. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, like when you give someone a quit claim, you're basically explaining that you are giving them whatever right you have in the property, which might be no right at all. Like I can give you a quit claim deed for the Main Street Bridge here in Jacksonville, but I can give you whatever interest I have in the property, which is absolutely nothing. And if you bargain for it and you get that, then you get nothing because that's what a quit claim deed is.
I agree, honestly.
Can I piggyback off of that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I chose C as well because for me a year is quite significant, especially by the fact that he needed the land for a restaurant he desired to build and operate. So getting a whole year in advance to, build your restaurant, get it started, and drop a legal claim that'll stop that from happening, I feel like that's a lot of consideration.
Right, and he knew that the dispute existed. You know, he said the claim was doubtful. I mean, if anything, you would say that it was like a failure to disclose type thing, but I agree with getting the quitclaim deed with no warranties. I mean, via real property law, the contract would merge into the deed already. I think it'd be too late to sue under the contract, and you got a quitclaim deed. I like C. I like C. C is correct, a quitclaim deed. So this kind of isn't frustrating because it's kind of a real property question. A quitclaim deed, even when the holder is aware that their claim to the property is doubtful, is sufficient consideration to form a contract, right? Like that in itself constitutes a consideration. An unequal exchange of value between two parties will not in itself invalidate it, right? Because she was aware of the agreement. I mean, I don't think that's what people were arguing with A. I think people were arguing that like she kind of was acting deceptively, but let's see, A is incorrect. What matters for finding consideration is the existence of an exchange, even if the values are unequal. The correct answer would be different if instead of giving the quitclaim deed, the sister had promised to forbear from bringing a claim that she knew was doubtful. C is correct. In exchange for the chef's promise to pay the sister $6,000, the sister agreed to convey and promptly filed through conveying to the chef a quitclaim deed for a piece of property. Even though the sister knew her claim to the property was doubtful and the deed did not contain a warranty of title, her promise to convey the quitclaim deed was sufficient consideration to support the chef's promise. So, I mean, that's the takeaway is the conveyance of a quitclaim deed by itself constitutes consideration, even if the conveyor doubts that it has the right to convey the deed. And kind of a weird, sneaky question. So someone's saying I hate this question. Someone's saying that they didn't believe you could do it with no claim to the property. I mean, you could do it. It's just like that the suit would be under the deed, not the contract. Remember that. This is why you should only accept a quitclaim deed if you're transferring land to yourself, your spouse, or vehicle you control, like a trust. So with that logic, anyone create a quitclaim deed, even if you actually don't have interest in the property. I mean, technically, yes, you're not going to find anyone to buy it from you, you know? They could do a record search pretty quickly. Like it's not something that you can just fool someone with, but they thought that they may have a claim, so they bargained for it. They said, hey, I'll pay for this thing and it might turn back around and haunt me, but maybe I'll get it. It wasn't like they were sure they had no claim in it. It was just doubtful. All right, let's just do a couple more. And then leave it to football Sunday. No, if I set my fantasy lineups. Why don't we have someone read this? Sean, do you mind reading this question?
Sure. If the seller sues the buyer on October 15th for breach of contract, the seller will probably. So on June 1st, a seller and a buyer contracted in writing for the sale and purchase of the seller's cattle ranch, which is a large single tract of land, and to close the transaction on December 1st. On October 1st, the buyer told the seller, I'm increasingly unhappy about our June 1st contract because of the current cattle market, and I do not intend to buy your ranch unless I am legally obligated to do so. So if the seller sues the buyer on October 15th for breach of contract, the seller will probably A, win because the buyer committed a total breach by anticipatory repudiation on October 1st, win because the buyer's October 1st statement created reasonable grounds for the seller's insecurity with respect to the buyer's performance, lose because the parties contracted for the sale and conveyance of a single tract, and the seller cannot bring suit for breach of such a contract prior to the agreed closing date, or D, lose because the buyer's October 1st statement to the seller was neither a repudiation nor a present breach of the June 1st contract.
Nice. So I didn't mean to click that. That has no bearing on it. My fantasy lineup is set, but it's not looking good. And I didn't get to bet on the Eagles, but whatever. I just have to work for my money instead. I'm starting Ricky Pearsall, the dude who got shot in the chest at the beginning of the season. That's how bad it is. I'm literally starting a player who got shot in the chest. All right. I do not intend to buy a ranch unless I'm legally obligated to do so. That's not a true repudiation, right? It's not a true repudiation because he said, unless I'm legally obligated to do so. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, buddy, you are legally obligated to do so. So it's like, I'm not gonna show up for class tomorrow unless I have to. Well, unfortunately, I do have to because you guys probably paid an invoice that was consideration of me showing up for class as you were told by your representative or whatever it may be. Like, I have to do it. So just because I say I'm not going to do it unless I have to, that caveat makes it like not a repudiation. It's like, I'm not going to show up for work tomorrow unless the sun rises tomorrow. Well, the sun's going to rise tomorrow. I am going to show up for work tomorrow. It's like, it's just kind of a whole bunch of nonsense here. So I think that we can agree with the results here, that this was neither repudiation nor a present breach of contract unless I'm legally obligated to do so. Kind of like tricky. It's a tricky test. I know that some professors tell you it's like a straightforward minimum competency test. There's no tricks on the test. I think they need to update their lingo because there's a lot of tricks on the test and it's not an easy test. So let's kind of recognize that in real speed. Like, unless I'm legally obligated to doesn't actually constitute a repudiation. Anticipatory repudiation requires an unequivocal statement of unwillingness to perform a contractual obligation, not mere doubt or uncertainty. Here, the buyer expressed serious doubt and may have established insecurity, but did not amount to a full repudiation. It wasn't clear and unequivocal. There was also not a breach because the time for performance had not yet passed. Under the doctrine of anticipatory repudiation, it must be clear and unequivocal. The buyer statement, I'm increasingly unhappy. I do not intend unless I'm legally obligated to. It gives rise, but it was not sufficient unequivocal because it just said, unless I'm legally obligated to. So that's the takeaway I'm going to take away. The takeaway I'm going to take away is that the statement, I don't intend to honor the contract unless I'm legally obligated to, is not an anticipatory repudiation because it is not a clear and unequivocal statement of an intent not to honor the obligations of the contract. All right. What do you think, CJ? Who's going to be the NFL MVP this year? The quarterback from Buffalo?
No way. Lamar Jackson from
Lamar
South
Jackson.
Florida.
Yeah. I hope it's
He's gonna
Saquon
get a
Barkley.
Super Bowl too.
Yeah. He's on my fantasy football team. I actually have him and Saquon Barkley. I have like the two best players in fantasy football, and then no one else good. That's my problem. I have no depth. I had like Rashee Rice, but he got injured super quick. That hurt. All right. If a friend sues the man to recover the value of the book, how should the court rule? A man sent an email to a friend that stated, because you've been a great friend to me, I'm going to give you a rare book that I own. The friend replied by an email that said, thanks for the rare book. I'm going to give you my butterfly collection. The rare book was worth $10,000. The butterfly collection was worth $100. The friend delivered the butterfly collection to the man, but the man refused to deliver the book. If the friend sues the man to recover the value of the book, how should the court rule? For the man, because there was no bargain for exchange to support his promise. For the man, because the consideration given for his promise was inadequate. For the friend, because she gave the butterfly collection to the man in reliance on receiving the book. Or for the friend, because she conferred a benefit on the man by delivering the butterfly collection. This one is a reading comprehension question because it says, because you've been a great friend to me. There's no consideration there. That's prior consideration. That's not an exception. There's nothing, that's not an agreement. That's a gift. I'm going to give you a rare book that I own. So first statement is a gift. Then this second statement is, thanks, bro. And then he says, I'm going to give you my butterfly collection. This is just a totally new statement here, right? It's like, you're giving me this book. Thank you. Now I'm going to give you, this is the book I'm recommending everyone to read, The Rise of Wolf 8. It's an awesome book. Then I'm going to give you this butterfly collection. Like, it's not an agreement. It's not because you gave me this book, I'm going to give you that. Or if you give me this book, I'll give you that. I just feel like there's no consideration here. Now, the B says the consideration given for the promise was inadequate. That's really not a good answer on the test. Like, we don't really look into the adequacy of consideration. In fact, the question we did like 2 questions ago with the quitclaim D was kind of similar. Like, I don't like B, I like A, right? There was no bargain for exchange to support his promise. There was no consideration. It wasn't that it was inadequate consideration. It was that it lacked consideration, right? So everyone got that one right. I mean, pretty much guided you there. A is correct. To constitute consideration, a return promise must be bargained for. A return promise is bargained for when it's sought by the promisor in exchange for his promise and is given by the promisee in exchange for that promise. Because the man's promise to give the rare book to the friend did not seek a return promise or performance, the friend's promise to give the man her butterfly collection did not constitute consideration for the man's promise. Accordingly, no contract arose between the parties, and the court should rule in favor of the man. So the takeaway is, if A gives B a gift, and then B promises to give A a gift, there is no consideration to support the promise, right? Give A a gift. What's wrong with that? Let's call him Andrew. And let's call B Brian. Those are real names in my family. Does anyone know my oldest brother's name? See any people really been stalking me out there. Andrew is me, the youngest. Brian is the middle. No one knows my oldest brother's name? Good. Or secret, private family. Okay, we'll do one last question, right? You guys kind of want to get out of here, watch football, or go to church? Oh, stop! Don't do that question. Don't do that question. Let's do. Why is it so hard? No, I can't do that. Well, either. I'm sorry. Here we go. All right, final question of the day. If the homeowner sues the buyer for breach of contract, is the homeowner likely to prevail? I don't know. Let's see. Before putting her home up for sale, a homeowner painted the living room ceiling to conceal, oh, we don't like that, major water damage caused by a leaking roof that had not yet been repaired. On the first day the home was offered for sale, the homeowner gave a buyer a personal tour. The homeowner made no statements at all regarding the water damage or the roof. Without discovering the water damage or the leaking roof and without consulting, the buyer immediately agreed in writing to buy the home for $200,000. Definitely not in Miami. Before the closing date, the buyer discovered the water damage and the leaking roof. The cost of repair was estimated at $22,000. The buyer has refused to go through with the purchase. If the homeowner sues the buyer for breach of contract, is the homeowner likely to prevail? No, because no contract was formed since the buyer did not have a real opportunity to understand the essential terms of the contract. No, because the homeowner concealed evidence of the water damage and of the leaking roof. Yes, because the homeowner made no affirmative statements of fact about the water damage or the leaking roof. Yes, because the buyer acted unreasonably by failing to employ an inspector to conduct an independent inspection of the home. I think this one's pretty obviously conceal it. Like, you literally concealed it. It literally says concealed. We're not gonna cover for the concealer. A misrepresentation of fact induces assent. A misrepresentation of fact that induces assent provides a basis for avoidance of a contract. A misrepresentation is defined as a statement that is not in accord with the facts. Affirmative conduct is that is intended or known likely to prevent another from learning the fact is equivalent to an assertion that the fact does not exist and constitutes a misrepresentation. The homeowner's painting over the water damage constitute affirmative conduct intended to prevent the buyer from learning of the water damage and the leaking roof. Therefore, the buyer's assent was induced by misrepresentation and the buyer can avoid the contract. So, concealment will allow the non-breaching party to avoid the contract. Okay, so I mean, I know we didn't get to do that many today. It was honestly because I was doing introductions, which I think are important, but like at least you got a little page of facts here. I'm gonna do a couple things for us right now and then send you on your merry way. The first thing is I'm gonna give access to this to everyone, and then I'm going to, in real speed, put it in the Google Classroom and you guys can see where that is. I mean, this is the way that the class goes. Is we're not reinventing the wheel. This is how I've been doing my classes for a long time now. I just do workshops on Sundays. I might switch up the provider. Like, this was Adapt tomorrow. I'll probably do UWorld next time. I might do my own QBank the time after that. I could do BarMax. I could really do whatever. And then I take this Cram guide and we're gonna put it right in the Google Classroom. You should all have access to the Google Classroom, and then I could just create it. I'll call it material. We'll call it the Feb 2025 Cram guide, in progress. And then we'll put like a heart there. Post it, it's gonna be right at the top of the course, because I think it's like the most important thing, like we're doing that. But remember, what we did as a class today is what you should be doing on your own. Just tons of practice questions, creating your own cram guide, you know, reinforcing these points and leaving no stone unturned. I'll, you know, after I turn off the recording, I'll look through the chat, I'll answer any questions, but I am gonna go ahead and stop this recording.